It wasn't a dramatic scene. There was no intervention. No one came knocking on my door with tissues and healing words. It was just a Tuesday. I had just finished a work call, and I was alone in my kitchen. I opened the fridge, then closed it, then opened it again, and in a matter of minutes, without thinking, I started eating. Not out of hunger, not out of joy, out of numbness, out of panic, out of that quiet, heavy ache I couldn't name. And I remember, halfway through a bag of crackers, I stopped. Not because I was full, not because I was satisfied, but because I realized I didn't even taste any of it. I was trying to fill a hole in my soul using something that would never be enough. I dropped the food, slid to the floor, and cried harder than I had in years. Not because of the food, not because I had failed again, but because I finally understood this wasn't about food at all. This was grief. I was still grieving the child I never got to hold. Still punishing myself for a decision I couldn't undo. Still convinced that if I stayed small and hurt and hidden, maybe I could balance the scales. And I remember whispering out loud through the tears, God, I don't want to live like this anymore. That was my breaking point. Not the end of the story, but the end of the silence. The end of pretending I was just into health or going through a phase. The end of treating my body like the enemy. It was the moment I told myself the truth. The moment I let myself collapse. Now maybe you haven't had that moment yet, or maybe you're in it right now, feeling like something inside you is about to give. If that's you, hear me. It's okay to break. You were never meant to carry this all alone. And after that breaking point, sitting on the floor, tear-stained and empty, I wish I could tell you healing was immediate. Well, it wasn't. There was no lightning bolt, no overnight miracle. And then I was free at that moment. It was a process. Messy, non-linear, but sacred. And I started doing something I hadn't done in years. I started telling the truth. I didn't tell the whole world. I didn't post about it. Heck, I wasn't even on social media. I just told one person, a wonderful therapist I found through a Christian counseling group. And I sat in a room with her, voice shaking, heart pounding, and I said, I had an abortion, and then 2 more. And I've been punishing my body ever since. She didn't flinch. She didn't shame me. And she didn't rush to fix it. She just said, that makes so much sense. And that one sentence gave me permission to stop labeling myself as broken, as hopeless, and to start seeing myself as a woman in pain who deserved healing. And I started journaling, not to be poetic, but to be honest. And I wrote out what I was too afraid to say out loud. I miss the child I never got to hold. I feel guilty when I eat, because she'll never get to eat. I don't know how to live in a body I've punished for so long. And over time, the more I told the truth, the less power the shame had over me. I also started talking to God, not formally, but honestly. I stopped performance prayers. I stopped avoiding God. I stopped believing He was disappointed in me. And instead, I whispered things like, God, I don't know if I deserve to be free. I don't even know how to forgive myself. God, can you really love me after this? And slowly, quietly, He began showing me that He already had. I did something else too. I honored the child I lost. A little candle. I said their name, the one I'd been too afraid to speak, and I gave them a space in my memory instead of hiding them in my shame. And something shifted, and my long journey can be your shortcut, as I spent years developing a path to thrive, and now it's something I have to offer others. And something shifted. I stopped trying to erase the past and started learning how to carry it with grace instead of guilt. I also learned to listen to my body again. And when I was hungry, I ate. When I was tired, I rested. When I looked in the mirror, I stopped asking, do I look good enough? And I started asking, am I treating her like someone who deserves to be loved? And no, I didn't get it right every single day at the beginning. There were relapses. There were tears. There were weeks I didn't want to do the work, but I kept showing up, not for perfection, but for peace. And slowly, something beautiful started to grow. I began to trust my body again, not as a project, not as punishment, but as a partner in healing. And here's one thing I've learned. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering differently, without shame, without self-hatred, without needing to earn my right to breathe in peace again. It means finally learning how to live in the body you spent years fighting. If I could go back to the version of me who sat in silence, counting calories like a penance, pinching her skin in the mirror, and believing her body was the punishment for her past, I wouldn't correct her. I wouldn't quote her a verse. I wouldn't tell her to just love yourself. I'd hold her face and say, you are still worthy of love. Because that's the truth I live by now. Not the one shame wrote, not the one trauma whispered, not the one guilt screamed and replayed on a loop every time I sat down to eat. The truth is this. My body is not a battleground. It's a vessel for grace. It's not the enemy. It's not a billboard for my mistakes. It doesn't need to shrink to deserve rest. It doesn't need to be punished to prove I'm sorry. And your body? It's not a canvas for regret. It's not where your shame belongs. You don't have to spend the rest of your life trying to fix the one part of you that's been faithfully carrying your pain. Because I know now that God never left me, not even in the moment I thought I ruined everything. And that grief doesn't disqualify you from healing. It invites you into it. And that forgiveness isn't something I have to earn through suffering. It's a gift that was already given. And if no one has ever said this to you before, please hear it now. You are not too far gone. You are not the exception to grace. You are not defined by a moment you regret. You're allowed to heal, you're allowed to feel, and you're allowed to be free in a body that no longer has to carry what God already forgave. That's what I know now. And I pray it becomes what you begin to believe too. If you've made it this far, I just want to pause and say thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to watch this, to sit through the uncomfortable parts, and to open your heart to a conversation that most people avoid. That tells me something about you. It tells me you're not numb, you're not too hardened, you haven't given up, not completely. And if any part of this video felt like I was telling your story, if you saw yourself in the shame or the spiraling or the silence or the food, I want you to know truly, you are not the only one. There are so many of us carrying this kind of grief in our bodies, so many of us who smile in public and punish ourselves in private, and so many of us who believe that the lie that this is just the way it is doesn't have to be. So I want to invite you into nothing big, nothing public, just one small, quiet step toward healing. If you're ready to stop carrying this alone, and if something in you whispered, finally, during this video, just write these 4 words in the comments. I'm ready to heal, or I'm ready to be free. That's it. Not for me, but for you. So you can mark this moment, so you can begin again, gently, honestly, without shame. And if you're not ready to share publicly, that's okay too. You can whisper it in prayer. You can write it in your journal. You can cry it into your pillow, because God hears you either way. And He's not waiting for the perfect version of you to show up. He just wants the real one. If this spoke to you in any way, and you want to walk this healing journey together, I'd love for you to subscribe, or even share this with someone you know is struggling silently, just like you were. Your time is now. It's never too late. And you're allowed to come home to yourself again. And I'll be right here rooting for you. Remember, you are God's beloved.